The internet is full of conversion rate optimization advice for marketing gurus. But today we're going to find out what actually works and what is complete nonsense. So there is a ton of advice out there, but it's not always applicable to you. And what works for them might work for them because it's within their context. They have tested other things and every business is completely different. So it becomes very hard for you to know what advice to actually follow. And often when they advise you these things, there is no context around it. You don't really know if it's for an e-commerce business or if for a fitness business, if someone's applying direct response marketing, where their traffic comes from. There are so many things that you have to take into account, and just taking the advice might not get you the results. So today I'm going to take you through a bunch of videos that I found online set by marketing gurus, tell you exactly if it's worth implementing this into your own business and if not. So I'll play a few of these guru clips from people like Alex Hormozi or Gary Vee, and then after each statement they made, I'll show you exactly what I think about that and how we would do this differently for the e-commerce stores that we work on, running millions of dollars every single month. Okay, so let's start with Alex Hormozi's advice on landing pages.
The process is simple. Every week, what we do is we have our marketing meeting and we do one split test. Just one, all right? And that's because everyone wants to test 100 things. But what it does is it forces us to be very, very focused on the one thing that we think is going to drive the highest result for us.
Yeah, okay, so he says focus on one test a week. I think there are two sides of the coin here. One is often people get too scared away because there's so much going on and you have a lot of things to do with testing. So simplifying it to one does actually get you to act upon it. However, if you do have the traffic, which I guess he has, of course tracking or testing only one thing a week is too slow, because imagine half of these or even more are going to be fails. It doesn't mean that you're going to get results every week, but in this case only every 2 or 3 weeks. And I would say that's way too slow if you already have the traffic. So generally, the more you can test, the better. Even if you test things at the same time on the same page, that's fine, as long as they're not the same hypothesis. In that case, for him, I would run way more tests and dedicate every few days per month to it to come up with these tests and be a lot more efficient.
When we are running split tests on marketing, especially for paid advertising, I'll give you the two biggest things that we look at, all right? The first thing, it sounds obvious and simple, but people don't do it, is we simply split test the headlines on our landing pages. That's it. We simply split test the headlines. The next thing that we'll split test is going to be the image that is underneath of the headline. All right, because what we've seen from the vast majority of all of the tests that we've done is that almost all of the juice that's going to come, the biggest jumps in conversion rate, happen above the fold.
Okay, so this totally makes sense, because above the fold, 100% of the users will see, but only 60% will not scroll further than that. So what that means is the prime real estate on your site is above the fold, and generally it's also on mobile. So that combination, above the fold and mobile, is where you should dedicate, let's say 70% of your testing time towards. Because if you're able to nail down this section on the page, you will intrigue users to scroll down, and then you've already captured their attention. Generally within a second, people leave because they already know that this is not for them. One thing to note here is that Alex is talking about landing pages. So someone comes to a page and they got no clue what you're selling. For an e-commerce store, of course, you can see the image and it's very easy to kind of get a feel for what they're selling. But on a landing page, your headline is basically your product. So if your headline is wrong or off or confusing, that hurts all your conversion rate. So testing your headline and the image visible above the fold, if you nail that perfectly, then you will see incredible results.
There's a million things that we should do, right? We should probably be better about our follow-up. We should probably be doing more email marketing. We should probably be making more content. Well, obviously, but what of all of the things that we can do, given the resources, time, effort, and human capital that we have and money, are going to drive the biggest result?
Yes, and this is key. So for him, that might be above the fold on the landing page. But before you start testing anything, you have to start with an audit. And then an audit helps you figure out what pain points the user is experiencing, and there might be many, but it also helps you prioritize which of the tests are the easiest to implement and are most likely to give me the best results. Changing a button color is easy, but it's not going to do much for your business. Auditing your site and figuring out how to sort or organize the testing IDs is crucial to success. There are different models for that, ICE or CLX, that help you sort this in a more objective way. Now let's go have a look at another video from Alex.
And so, quick recap on this. Dream outcome is people actually have to want the thing that you're delivering to them, number one. Number two is that when they buy, they will buy based on the perceived likelihood that they're actually going to get that thing. So it's like a lot of people may want to get rich, but they will buy the one that they think that has the highest likelihood of actually them getting there, right? Or a lot of people might want to look skinny, but they'll work with the physician that has worked with 10,000 patients rather than their first patient, because their perceived likelihood of actually getting skinny or getting the surgery they want is higher. And they, in a very real way, value it more. Time delay is how quickly something can happen, right? Is between when I buy and when I get, if we can compress that time horizon or that timeline, the more valuable it is. If I can get you a 6-pack in 30 days versus 6-pack in 30 months, which one do you value more? Of course, the 30 days one. So we try and compress the time horizon along how we deliver our products and services. And then finally, effort and sacrifice are the things that we have to start doing that we don't want to do, or we have to give up doing that we do want to do as a result of the purchase. And so in a perfect world, we want to deliver someone the dream outcome, and when they buy it because they have extremely high likelihood or they're certain that they're going to achieve that, and they're going to achieve it overnight with ease, right? So fast, easy, and exactly what they want, the way they want it to be delivered. All right.
Okay, so this is actually really good advice. And CRO often is thought to be like these sneaky little tricks to have like a countdown timer to make people stress out about their purchase. Where it all comes down to is your actual offer. We've seen stores doing 6% conversion rate, and the only single reason for that is that they're incredibly unique. They're offering something that the user cannot find elsewhere. So the user feel that they're making a win. What Alex basically explains is a formula that helps you understand how much value the user is getting from something and what they have to give up for it. Because if we just translate everything in a monetary value, you offer them a service that is to them worth $100. Whenever you charge more than $100, they will be dissatisfied and they will not make that purchase. It's not this black and white. So a lot of times the actual value that you offer can be changed. The amount that they pay is probably fixed. You got a price on the page. The perceived value by the user changes based on the offer, the risk that you can take away from them, how quickly you can deliver on this. There are many different ways to offer a better product than you actually do. And if we speak in economic terms, there is this economic surplus framework that you can see here. And basically what we have here is a line for the supply and a line for the demand. So in a perfect world, the combination of those two define the price of the product. And if that value is $100, whenever you charge the user $90, they feel they're winning something, right? They just saved $10. They paid you less than the value they got in return. So they win. And that's the objective of this equation, of this offer. Your aim is to communicate in a certain way, but also have a product that really compels the user. If you're charging $100, but it's worth $90 to them, they are not going to make that purchase because they're losing. So it's your job to change the communication, to change the offer, to really make the user feel that they're stealing something. And an interesting way to think about this is, let's say you saw something online, but it's quite a big purchase. So you have to go to your spouse to convince that person. And then what are the things that you would mention? You will say it is a discount, while you might generally feel you're not really sensitive to those things. But once you have to convince someone else, you will say, it's on a discount and then we're gonna get lucky and this is a great steal for us. That's an interesting way to look at it. And that's basically what Alex summarizes. And this is really good advice. Okay, the next video is from Neil Patel. Of course, he's the original marketing guru and has some really valuable advice.
The first thing you need to do is clearly state your value proposition in a header. And this is important. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'll state the value proposition somewhere on the page. No, the attention span of a human is less than a goldfish. In other words, if you can't catch their attention in the headline, you're screwed.
Yeah, this is so true, because again, it's above the fold and the header is just systematically the first thing they read. Just because it's a big text, it's all the way at the top of the page. This is also why Google calls it an H1 and they want to know what is the H1 tag. Having your offer stated clearly, short, and in a valuable way is the best thing you can do. And of course, what you generally tend to do is the header is almost over-promising on what you have to offer. And a little bit sparking interest and curiosity is not a bad way. So what you generally try to do, the above the fold, is 3 things. You first add an eyebrow, which is a little tag above the title. This doesn't always get read, but it's something incredibly interesting. Could be how many times it's been downloaded, why this is something unique, or who approved this. And in the title, you want to almost overpromise on what you have to say. You want to spark interest so users actually read further down the page. So in this case, everything your best friend deserves, which is how does someone even do that? That sparks interest, and then people start reading the subtitle, and that's kind of where you back up the claim you made in the huge title. And after that, you add 1 or 2 buttons. But having these 4 elements makes a huge difference. Basically the framework we apply at every page we design.
Second thing you need in your landing page is a visual focus. Whether it's a headshot, product shot, a video, some sort of visual focus where people can put all their attention to. See, the moment someone goes through a headline, they read it, you need to grab their attention with the visual and you need to get them to keep going. If you just have text and only text and no visuals that people can watch, you'll find that the conversions aren't as great. The higher quality you produce, the better off you are.
Yeah, and this is so true, because generally the title explains it in text, but everybody can say whatever they want in a title. So if you have some visual or even a video, the user can very quickly understand what it is that you're selling. And a video often tells 1,000 words, but it's also incredible social proof. Because up until now, it's not super easy to make a video. So faking something is incredibly hard. And an image, we already know we can do that with AI. But a video is not just there yet. But besides the faking part, you can show incredible features from your product just in a simple video.
Is to outline the features and benefits, but it's not just about features. You need to more so focus on the benefits. So the features are there because if you don't talk about the features, you're not going to get as many conversions. But the benefits are the key. People don't buy something because of features. They buy because of the benefits. Typically, benefits are the solution to their problem, such as saves you time, saves you money. If the benefits aren't there and they're not clearly stated, you're not going to do well.
Exactly. This is absolutely right. And we see this wrong all the time, because you as a business owner, you know all the features and all the little details, you've patented it, you have a trademark in this. The user doesn't simply care. What they care is solving their problems. So that's also why in your communication, you need to make sure you talk about the solution, not necessarily your features. It's kind of where I spoke about the title and the subtitle. The title is the benefit that you offer, the solution to their problems. And how you do that is with your features. So benefits always come first and then the features. So here is an example of one of our landing pages. Here again, we have that eyebrow that I mentioned. We got so many revenue generated through a B tests. We have this massive title that just clearly states what this actually is. There's very little confusion coming from this. And then after making that claim, we show a few bullet points. Bullet points are great because it's very easy to scan through. If you have a very long paragraph, you're going to skip things because you don't have the time to read everything. So having a few bullet points, short and just 3, often allows the user to very easily understand what this is. So you can back up the claim that you made in the title.
Well, the 4th step is presenting a single and focused call to action. A lot of people are like, oh, I got a landing page, I'm going to put a call to action everywhere. You could do that, and for some products it works, but not for most. The reason you want to have a single focused call to action, and eventually after that one call to action, you can have more later down, but when you have your headline, your visual focus, you're talking about your benefits, your solutions, you're answering the objections. Once someone gets the whole story and they understand why they should be buying your product or service, and then you have a call to action, they're much more likely to convert.
Yeah, again, of course, this is incredibly complicated, but it's definitely true. So a lot of the things you can do on the landing page is explain the whole product, but you also want to remove any friction. So as you can see, a lot of the landing pages don't have a menu, don't have a footer, only have one button. And that's just because you don't want to overload the user with different options. The more options, the less likely they're going to choose. So if you simplify it, the user is much more likely to act. And generally, your marketing funnel goes broad to specific, but your page is like that too, right? You kind of filter down the people who are only likely to make that conversion and click the CTA. It hugely depends on the business that you run, because maybe you got multiple products. So if someone's not interested in this product, they're going to leave if you don't offer the other products. This one is definitely complex, and it's definitely worth testing rather than implementing straight away. What he mentioned about making sure people are ready to purchase once you ask them to make that purchase makes total sense. So here I can show you a report from a test that we ran, and we improved the product page on a Shopify store. The conversion rate actually went down by 10%, which is of course not good. But the interesting thing is that the add to cart rate actually went up. So the improvement on the page did have a positive effect on the add to cart rate. Users were much more likely to add their product to cart. But because they were much more likely and it's a lot easier, a lot of them were probably not ready to make the actual purchase yet. They added to cart without actually already making that decision. So the intent of the user when they add to cart changes drastically. So what Neil Patel says, yes, you get more button clicks, but not more purchases, is exactly the same as what we saw here in this test. So you want to make sure you educate the user and that you capture their click or their lead when they're definitely ready to actually consider that purchase. Again, this is something worth testing. It's not always like that. This is something I'll be incredibly careful with.
The sixth thing you need to do is give a guarantee. Whether you're doing a free trial with no credit card so there's low risk, or you're doing a 30-day or 60-day money-back guarantee, those are awesome things. You want people to feel comfortable. If they're not happy, you know you're gonna end up refunding them anyways. If you don't, in the long run, it's gonna tarnish your brand.
Yes, and this basically comes down to what Hormozi said earlier. Your offer needs to be top-notch. It needs to be really, really good. It needs to be worth more than the money the customer pays. And offering a guarantee really reduces the risk that the user takes. An interesting way of looking at it is that you should be the one that cannot sleep at night because you have to deliver on the promise, rather than the user who's afraid to swipe their card on your website. So offering a guarantee basically helps you generate more revenue and holds you accountable in making that promise. But of course, if you don't offer a guarantee and users complain, you're still losing that business anyway. So no business will persist if they cannot deliver on the promise they made, whether they offer a guarantee or they don't. So why not offer anyway? Okay, so that was Neil Patel. Now let's go into Gary Vee, who is of course an incredible social media personality, and he's definitely very good advice, but I think you can see he's less familiar with building pages.
One, you need to be thinking about how you get them in there, and two, you need to think about what happens when they get there. Let's go old school. Let's pretend that your pods are a restaurant. Okay, you open a restaurant and you have thousands of people coming to your restaurant, but they're not ordering food, they're just sitting there and they're not bringing you any value. There's a couple things to debate. One, did you bring the right people there? If your marketing was, come to this restaurant and something amazing is gonna happen that you've never seen before. We can't tell you, it's a big surprise. You might win $1 million. They all start showing up. They weren't there to eat your burger. They weren't there to eat your fries. They weren't there to eat your salad. They weren't there to drink a cup of coffee. They were there because you made a promise that when you got into the restaurant, I'm treating your place as a diner, by the way, in my brain. You didn't deliver that. They're like, cool, pickles and coleslaw, but I came because I thought that we were gonna get $1 million.
Yeah, so as I said, he's really good at generating traffic from social media. So his point is absolutely valid. And this is an issue we see all the time. You test something, you complete it, you have an amazing winner, but once you go into production, all of a sudden it doesn't look that great anymore. But that's really because you're testing in a certain time period, and the period after that is drastically different. Perhaps the sun is shinier this week than it was last week. Perhaps traffic has changed because a new campaign took off. There are so many variables that come into play that defines the conversion rate performance, but the traffic quality is absolutely one of them. So that's what he says. If you promise people the world on your ad or on social media post, but once they come to the landing page, it's completely different, then of course they are less likely to actually make that purchase. So having some sort of consistency throughout your marketing funnel is crucial in converting these users. So here I have an example as well from the data from a test we ran. The conversion rate is completely different when it comes to mobile or Facebook or Google Ads. And an interesting test to do is actually figuring out how you can improve the experience from the users that are coming from a certain channel, right? Like I already mentioned, you want to make your whole marketing story cohesive. Perhaps someone who saw an ad on Facebook is absolutely cold and they need to be educated a little bit more. So there are a lot of different ways that you can take in the traffic source and apply that on the site to improve performance overall.
My question for you is, how can we increase our conversion rate?
Well, have better product,
Okay.
I mean, that's, a lot of people don't think about that, right? Because they only think about, conversion rate has a lot to do with what's happening once they're there.
Right.
Right? So either your landing page, your UI, your UX, the copy, the images are not grabbing people, right? The other way you can do it is by building brand, right? So there's sales and brand, but these get into the finite details. I would scrutinize very heavily the shopping cart experience, where the drop off is. This is all math, where the buttons are. Have you A/B tested the color of the add to cart button? A lot of technical stuff. And then comma, are you building brand? Because people convert better when they trust or feel emotion. So if they've heard of you on Instagram or on a podcast or things of that nature, they'll feel more confidence once they get to that moment of truth. So it's about black and white technical nuances of a website, mobile optimization, things of that nature. And number two, really, are you establishing a brand that becomes trusted or loved?
Yeah, so Gary Vee makes an interesting point here, but I think he also misses it somewhere else. So the first thing he says, offer is king. And we've already talked about this is absolutely true. He said changing some colors here and there might make a difference. I wouldn't agree with that. I think it's a waste of time, except for when you're Airbnb or some massive company. But he said something that we haven't talked about before, and that is brand versus sales. If companies or customers are familiar with your brand, their intent when they come to the site is drastically different. You don't have to sell to them that much anymore because they already know what you offer, they already trust you, and their conversion rate is likely to be much higher. So the better you educate users outside of your site, the better their funnel performance will be on site. Speaks for itself. So a lot of things we actually see for smaller businesses is that they apply direct response marketing, which is basically where you scream to the user all the time and you make it incredibly clear what you want today. You're not necessarily educating them to come back next week. You're only thinking short term, which works because it's very easy to track. You run ads, they come to the site, you want a conversion today. You might give discounts and have some tricks like discount time down counters, banners, pop-ups, little ways to make them purchase today. But a brand will get you in the long run much further. But generates a transition. You want to start small, you want to scream, but at some point you want to build a brand so people are loyal, they come back. And it's definitely a very interesting topic that he touches on, definitely worth exploring. But overall, this is a long-term strategy and doesn't necessarily improve the conversion rate. So if you're a smaller business, I would aim for direct response marketing. The next few videos will be from Sabri Subi. He's an agency owner and his main skill is copywriting. He's incredibly good communicating to the client why they should purchase something today, and he really elevates the value of the offer.
What we can see here is that a disproportionate amount of the attention goes to the headline, which is exactly how we want it, which is great. Then there is no real focus on the CTA because it's try now, and it's basically the exact same color as the background of that image, which is also a no-no. But I'm not one of those guys that gets all caught up on button color. Yes, it moves the needle, but it's what I call a 1%er. It's not those things that's going to give you a violent swing in conversion rate improvement.
Yeah, so you can already see a certain pattern. Oh, everybody cares about the headline above the fold. He also says like changing button colors is not going to do much. So let's move on.
Typically, this is the first place that I do want to look. I want to look at like, is there a unique story? Is there something that I can latch on here that's going to be unique about this brand so I can position this in a way that isn't commodity? Because that's the thing with e-com. You don't want to be classed into a commodity. You don't want to be talking, for instance, that you use lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. Instead, you want to be talking about your proprietary blend of these adaptogenic mushrooms, because otherwise you're putting yourself into a product where someone can open up Amazon and then they can just type in lion's mane coffee and then they can find the cheapest alternative and then they can go with that.
Of course, this is very different from what we've seen before. This is more business strategy. And what Sabri says makes total sense. When you're in a physical store, you're not going to take your car and drive to another one when they almost sell the same product. So there's some advantage there. But when you're shopping online, you basically buy the product that's the cheapest if they're all the same anyway. So what you need to do to be different is to make a story. Tell users why your business is different than any other. Tell people why they should purchase with you rather than take a cheaper option from Amazon. So that storytelling really elevates the perceived value, but you have to do it in a very creative way.
We're going to assume that, and then we want to start thinking about, okay, what are some headlines that we can come up with? Here's one that I've just spitballed out. Forbidden coffee once reserved for Amazonian warriors unlocks deep flow state and unshakable focus. So we're going with why is this forbidden? That obviously is going to pique some curiosity in this marketplace. And we want to pick some story. Either it's whether we're going down the Ethiopian angle or we're going to go down like an Amazonian angle. We have to have something that's going to tie in and want people to know more. So first of all, like, why was this coffee forbidden? And if it's reserved for Amazonian warriors to get the big benefit that it is that they want, which is to unlock deep flow state and unshakable focus.
So he takes a very competitive product. He creates a story about it. It might seem a little bit dreamy, but users buy this. They buy with the story because it elevates the value. And then he keeps the center of the story, the value, the benefit the user gets from purchasing this product. And then he keeps focusing on that. Right? So he helps people understand why they should purchase this and not a cheaper variant. And he does that through the use of power words. Some words are just felt a lot more than others. Hidden, secrets, steal. You can look this up. There's just a known list of power words. And then he makes sure that those intrigue the user, that they spark interest. And this is what you do above the fold. You make these crazy claims and then you educate users because they are interested to learn more about the product. And that's how you differentiate yourself from cheap products they can find elsewhere. So there you have it. We've gone through 4 experts explaining how you can improve your conversion rate, debunked what is true and what you should take with a grain of salt. But as we've seen, there's a very common thread among these. These guys have spent millions and millions on marketing and they know what works. And I think what we can take away from this is that you need to capture the attention above the fold. Use an inspiring and intriguing headline that's clear to the user, adds the value to your offering, and is very benefit driven. Then right below that, you want to basically explain how you dare to make that amazing, huge, bold claim. And that should explain that you're trustworthy and why you're unique. And once you've managed that, the user will continue reading your product. Have an element that's the focus center, either a video or an image, but you need to educate the user until they're ready to make a purchase. And then at that stage, you offer them a call to action or a form. So you make sure that the users have high intent and don't only click your add to cart button, but actually do make that purchase. And then by differentiating yourself, you make sure that these customers are turned into loyal customers. They tell their friends and you grow your business without spending more on ads. I hope this was helpful. If you need support doing an audit for your e-commerce store, definitely let us know and then we can help you grow your business to the next level.